everyone. Welcome again to another Mediaworks Masterclass. As you know, my name's David Norris and I'm the Group Operations Director here at Mediaworks, and I'll be hosting today's session, which forms part of our SEO Masterclass series that we've been working our way through. I've got Jack joining me today. So Jack, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, as you've seen me hopefully before, I'm Jack, the Organic Search Director here at Mediaworks, often co-hosting these with David, and alongside us we have Ross.
Hi guys, yes, so I'm the content lead here at Mediaworks, working with our expert team of copywriters and editors to ensure client success on anything SEO content.
Thanks very much, Ross. So again, you'll see today that there's a real focus on anything content in relation to SEO. We've talked, as we've done in all the previous sessions, we've talked about claiming your complimentary audit. We've delivered a number of audits for clients. The first one started very general. We then delivered a tech audit, looking at all things website and how it's performing from a crawling indexation perspective. As part of the session today, we'd like to offer a complementary content audit that will focus on a number of areas that we'll go through shortly. As you can see, this is part of the SEO Masterclass series that we're delivering. This is the second one. We've got the third one, which is focusing on digital PR in a couple of weeks' time, and on the 2nd of May, followed by the future of search marketing. So don't be put off if you haven't joined previous sessions. You can always catch up on YouTube, and we'll send out all of the links to all the relevant content there. But as I say, yeah, we'll be coming for more SEO content in the future, very near future. So what we'd like to offer today on the back of today's session is a free personalized content insight document, which will really focus on identifying a key audience of focus and then unlocking 2 to 5 actionable content ideas that we'd like to take you through. I think it's worth saying, Jack, when we've been delivering these audits, people have been asking us about how we get such depth in them, and not just essentially utilizing a single tool and making quite a generic set of recommendations. It's worthwhile saying that we do put quite a lot of time, energy, effort into producing something that's quite bespoke for people.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's one of those where, yeah, we'll be very controversial and say, yeah, it's not just a SEMrush report, it's not a screaming frog rule. We are putting, I would say, from our full service, maybe anywhere between 5 to 10% to give you guys a flavor of what's happening and really put a step in the right direction for a strategy, and not just something which is here you go and then you throw it in the bin straight away. Yeah. It's actually of value and something that, using our own processes to get there.
Yeah, the feedback that we've had so far has been really positive as well. So as said, if you do want to sign up for a free personalized content audit for your business, then please do register by clicking on the link in the chat that we'll be sharing as it goes out. We'll also follow up with email reminders on that as well. So we'll be looking to deliver those over the next couple of weeks. So I guess where we've always started, Jack, is the SEO process maturity model. And I guess for us, we've always talked about how there's a number of key areas to this. So first few weeks we focused on technical. We're now into sort of on-site content. I said next time we're back talking about all things SEO, we'll be talking off-site and all things DPR, followed by sort of what we call advancements or ideas around the future of search and AI. But today, Jack, we're focusing heavily on on-site and content, aren't we?
Exactly, yeah. So we've got a little bit around keyword research, not loads, but just because, again, we could spend a full 4 hours talking about keyword research and nuance there. But then, yeah, really diving into we're not touching it too much, but a bit around AI, because we are leaving that for 2 sessions. Yeah. But a bit around AI, as well as, how we audit content, how we really prioritize it, and just really best practice. So the aim of today is really to give you guys a good view on how we approach content, and how, again, hopefully you can replicate that, or, engage with us if you like, and how we can take that content forward.
Brilliant. So I guess we always lead with this, don't we? I think we always talk about, we know Google acts as a business, but I think the key call out here is really that Google needs happy users more so than ever before, where there's so much competition for that search activity. Ranking systems reward helpful, reliable and trustworthy content that's built for people. I think that's really worthwhile saying, because we're going to talk about how it needs to be user-centric. I think one of the challenges that often people make is that they'll write content or produce content based upon what they think should actually be produced, not what the audience is actually looking for or searching for. Poor content from a Google perspective ultimately equals a poor user experience. So imagine you make a search in Google for whatever term that you might want to make, blue sofas, but you end up getting a return that's essentially ranked number one that doesn't actually deliver on that query, and you're not served with content that's useful. Ultimately, you'll go somewhere else. And look, the likes of ChatGPT, Gemini, a whole host of other AI-based platforms that people are now utilizing is sort of challenging that traditional search. Even things like organic social search, which we're seeing quite heavily in things like TikTok, where younger generations are searching in the likes of TikTok and using it as a search engine. So there is an ever-increasing amount of competition, which does mean that your content really has to be on point to make sure you're maximizing that opportunity.
And I think it's one of those, just before we move on to this slide, is actually, that competition between ChatGPT and like Gemini. And actually, we've been in meetings with clients, prospects who have said, we're changing the way we search. We are looking for more kind of in-depth instructional queries on ChatGPT, but then sticking to the more transactional, maybe product research on Google.
Yeah.
So there really is this push-pull, and we don't really know where we're going to land yet.
Yeah, and also the landscape keeps moving, which we always talk about in SEO. Yes, we talk about these fundamentals, and it feels we've been talking about the fundamentals for a while. But what I'd say is the nuance within each of those streams is constantly moving, which is what keeps us coming back for more.
Exactly.
Well, you have to be so imperative now to continuously evolve with, the advancement of AI and everything. So it's just, there's never been a more important time to evolve, really.
No, absolutely. So I guess, Jack, let's address the AI elephant in the room. We've touched on it. As you've said, we're doing a session in a few weeks' time on AI specifically in the future of search and what that means. But I guess the challenge for me is always around, and we've been asked this question a lot by clients over the last 12 to 18 months, which is really, where does Google draw the line with AI content?
And that's it. So we are just going to box this off once and for all for now.
For now.
And this is taken from Google's own developer support. And it really just says, Google doesn't mind how content is being produced, as long as it is of a quality and is delivering reliable, high quality results for users. And really, that is what we have to live and die by. Really, it's just, Google's not going to penalize us for AI content. It is, however, going to penalize us for low effort, low quality, low resourcefulness content, which obviously is not going to help anybody.
Yeah, and we do talk about this concept of EEAT later on in the session, but it is worth saying that sort of Google is talking about that as being the framework for what do they find as demonstrates quality. Well, they'll say it needs to show expertise, it needs to show experience, it needs to have an authoritativeness to it, and there needs to be an element of trustworthiness to it. So it's not just okay to go out there, scrape and syndicate loads of content and put it out there. That is in essence classed as low quality content from a Google perspective in relation to AI. So again, we will talk more about AI as we go through this session, but we just wanted to put out the position on that as it stands right now. So I guess the question then becomes, Jack, how are we using AI? Because let's not shy away from it. We do utilize AI across the business.
Yeah, that's it. And Ross, feel free to jump in. But it's one of those where we are using AI, but it is from a ideation, a bit of refinement, and really that second opinion, almost like a co-pilot. I think that's probably the best way, even though co-pilot is obviously a
Microsoft product.
Yeah, however, but it is that co-pilot element of really trying to help us create definitions or create segments or elevate some of our work. What it is not is a replacement for skilled copywriters, content creators, editors. It just is that complementary touch rather than being kind of full send into another tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I absolutely say to the team, utilize AI for the benefits that we can see, very useful for ideation when it comes to DPR content, but from a perspective of if you are given a headline for an article you're going to write and not much else, utilizing ChatGPT to kind of help you guide how that guide and shape that article. It's so important, and it really, the time that it is saving allows, myself and the rest of the content team to really go ahead and write the most top quality content we can, because we're not having to kind of chase our tails and run around the internet trying to find sources for everything. It kind of just gives you that real useful starting point. So it's a fantastic, useful tool for the team within reason.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's things like, we've all used Microsoft Word for, decades. And the reality is, we all probably use the autocorrect function, that's in there. And it's one of those helpful suggestions, etc. What I would say is, again, just to be clear, we would never just produce AI-based content. It just, as I say, it ultimately won't lead to the things that you think it's going to lead to. Yeah. And we have seen clients talk to us in the past about the idea of, we can get ChatGPT to just write loads of content and produce that. And you're sat going, yeah, but again, where's the value in that? And actually, that's the real key here. It's not about volume, it's about value.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the real key elements that we really need to consider, and we do consider as we go through today's session.
Yeah.
So I guess the fundamentals then still remain.
Yeah, so it really is what we just kind of summarized over there in terms of, are we kind of meeting user intents? Is it relevant? Is it obviously, I know quality can be very ambiguous, but is it providing an opinion, a fact, a point that is unique and usable by the person or audience reading it? And then contextually as well is really important in terms of the point you made earlier about if someone's typing something into Google or even typing something into any of these AI assistants, is the content they're getting back contextualized to what they are talking about, and it's talking about the same product or the same size or the same color, and actually relevant to their initial search.
And I guess that's what we're going to cover today. When I think about the session that we've put together today, we're going to focus on those fundamentals and really how you engage and get the most out of those fundamentals and really make sure that that's driving your on-site content efforts. So I guess the question always becomes, the first starting point for me is, how do you define what your content strategy should be? And I think for me that comes from a number of sort of Jack. So I know sort of we're always looking at sort of who are they, how do they discover brands, how do they engage with brands, any challenges or pain points that we can see, purchase influences and content preferences. And we've got a number of ways that we can do that, haven't we? So I think, on the right hand side, for example, we use a tool called Global Web Index, but we have used other tools such as, for example, YouGov, etc. in the past, which basically allows you to really do a bit of a dive into your audience. And it's a survey based tool that allows us to see sort of what are the business challenges that those people are experiencing, sort of what are the purchase influences, but importantly it also talks about how do they discover your brand and also how do they engage with different types of content. So it's an indexing system that we do utilize as a real key driver for understanding the way that audiences want to be engaged with through the content that's out there.
Yeah, and it really serves as like the real kind of fundamental baseline for our keyword research. And I think it's a lot of kind of agencies, freelancers, SEO professionals or content professionals are missing, because it allows us to, take this whole universe of keywords and start aligning them to actual pain points or interests of that audience. So for example, if it is someone looking to purchase new tires for their car, well, actually, are they a 4x4 owner? So actually they care about traction and off-roading, or are they an EV owner? And actually what they care about is rolling resistance and getting as much, not miles per gallon, but miles per charge. So it allows us really to fall back with that research, which we'll go through in a second in terms of keywords, onto this. And I think it puts you at a very, very strong place. We've seen it time and time again in our own strategies where this pays dividends by doing this research at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, it's often one of the bits that, for whatever reason, is overlooked. And now what I would say is, if you haven't got a tool like this and you're working in-house and you don't have that type of sort of software or that sort of platform that you can engage with, I always think it's really important to just take a step back and understand the first party data that you might have that might be an indicator on some of this as well. Because I think that there is, in some ways, still no substitute for actually speaking to customers and really understanding what are they actually looking for. And yes, sort of that won't necessarily always align with search intent, but it's a really good indicator, isn't it? Is understanding that first party data around why people engaging, at what point are they engaging, are there particular trends to that, you know, are they price conscious, are they not price conscious, you know, and again, I think that's something that's often massively overlooked. You know, I was speaking to an education-based client yesterday who was talking about clearing for their institution versus the industry norms, and they were saying, for example, like clearing is a massive part of a lot of university strategies. For the organisation we were speaking to yesterday, they were saying it's not such a big emphasis for them as a different type of institution. So again, even just that bit of context, because you can just essentially go broad brush and say this is what the sector's doing, but actually understanding the context in which you're operating is really, really important. So we start with audiences, but then we've also got to then understand keywords, don't we, Jack?
Yeah, so realistically, we break them down to kind of 3 or 4 main areas. Informational, which is, yeah, you can see there, how to clean a washing machine, what size are my tyres. Then we've got navigational, so people looking for something, whether they're looking to go to YouTube or to a certain blog, or even geographically, where are they trying to get to. Commercial, which kind of sits in between informational and transactional, so where actually you might be further down the buying cycle or further down the journey to purchase. So, you know, are Audi's reliable? Starbucks summer flavors, that kind of thing. So you're a couple of steps away from purchasing. Then the final one is obviously that transactional conversional, which is, your next step is going to be a purchase a product or convert, inquire, that kind of thing. And
it's really important to understand those as layers and as levels, because again, around some you'll see a lot of volume, but actually not a lot of intent, versus some of them you might see smaller volume, but massive amount of intent. So it's really important to have that balanced view of the keywords that exist. Against that backdrop, then you've got to think about how you plan your content, because once you've got that audience insight and you've thought about what's out there, and you've also thought about where the keyword volume is and also where the intent is for specific products or specific user journeys, it's really important that you then have a plan for, so what, I guess, is the big question you've always got at this stage.
Yes, then it is about dropping into a kind of content audit. So really it is about assessing what we have and assessing what we need. And those two things are really the fundamentals of that content audit. It is about, what do I need to do? What do I need to prune potentially or remove? And then what do I need to either create or ideate, or whatever it might be. And if, as long as you have those outcomes from an audit, then you're in a good place.
Yeah. And then I guess the question always comes of how to evaluate content from an SEO specific perspective. I think it's worthwhile saying, because again, we could start talking about quality score and PPC, and we could talk about organic content as a really good example. But from an SEO value perspective, Jack, how do you think, or what do you think are the key sort of metrics that you're looking at?
Yeah, so that's it. So I appreciate I might have been a little bit vague when we talked about auditing just a second ago, but this is literally it. So it is actually, okay, right, when we're looking at our site, how many keywords does something rank for? How many impressions, how many clicks, how much visibility are we getting? And again, that can come from anything from, as we've talked about a few weeks ago, Google Search Console, SEMrush, Assistrix, and Ahrefs. Then your own traffic, so like a GA4, or again, Search Console. And then more, we have put time on site there, but it is about that engaged user element and actually, bounce rates, that kind of thing. But again, there is nuance in that, because sometimes you might have an article which answers the question on, how to bake a cake, and no one then has any need to go find out about purchasing a new oven. So it is all contextual, but it is that kind of user signal of whether it's positive for the page that the user's on.
I think for us, Jack, and that's in that one, the time on site element, I think it is as well, it's understanding what people are doing on site. And I know a few weeks ago, sort of myself and my colleague Johnny sat here and talked about user experience. But I think user experience as well is something that really plays into SEO. It's about how are people engaging, are they going below the fold on the page? Like, are they finding the right type of content quickly? Because time on site is a single metric, but as I say, that might be because it's an inefficient setup in terms of not directing people to the right other areas that you would branch off into. So again, it's all, everything's within context, isn't it? It's not a Google metric where it'll be you've spent longer than 2.5 seconds loading, so there's a problem. It's not as binary as that.
No, and it will definitely shift again if you have a more informational site, which is more lead gen, let's say, versus an e-com site, which is obviously very transactionally focused. It is very much, a good audit and a good valuation of your site will always be very relevant to you and your competitors and your market. very much a hot topic at the moment, but again, something that we're looking at from a performance or content point of view, because we are seeing literally clicks go this way, impressions go this way.
Yeah.
I think, in the most radical cases, we're seeing, websites lose 11,000 clicks for a page over a quarter, but then gain over 1.4 million impressions.
Yeah.
So it is understanding, well, being in an AIO, would you rather have 11,000 clicks or 1.4 million impressions in search?
Yeah, and what I would say is we aren't yet to see the impact that that's having on in terms of organic search performance. If you link that to organic derived transactions or organic based leads, we are not seeing that. But it's really interesting, isn't it, to see the impact that AIO is having within Google itself. And again, we will talk about this in more detail as we go through the coming weeks. So I guess the decision framework for me, and I'll come to you sort of, Ross, on this one, is like once you've done your audit, you are left with almost a decision tree is probably how I would like to describe it. So do you want to walk us through sort of what your decisions are on the back of that?
Yeah, so we've had the audit at this point. We have to assess essentially these 4 key points here. Do we need to remove whether the content is thin, outdated, or if it's even duplicated content? Because doing any of that can improve the UX, SEO, and the crawl efficiency. Is there a chance that we can repurpose or optimize the content that's already on the website? That could be through expanding content that is live, or and going through a piece of content that's well written but maybe not targeting keywords that we have seen would work for this particular type of content. You have the consolidate and merge element of it, which would be multiple pieces of content that kind of answer the same point. Can we merge them into one piece and make it more evergreen? And finally, we've got through all of those stages. And at this point, we've still seen that there's no content on site that is matching what we've looked at through the content audit. So at that point, we need to go ahead and create a new piece of content or a new page. And so kind of going through that 4-step process there once we've got the content audit to make the decision on what needs to happen next.
Yeah.
And any one of them 4 is a good outcome for us to have. So.
Yeah, and I think the thing I'd like to draw attention to there is, because I think this is one of the things that we do see is this isn't a one-off activity. I think you see that quite often whereby people will go through the process and then it'll be, oh, well, we ordered it like 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And you sat there going, but we all know like the way that consumers engage or the decision making or the way that keywords are engaging. And that's where you have to link it back to what performance are we ultimately seeing out of those areas. And giving it enough time to take hold as well. I think this isn't switch on, switch off approach. This does need to be an iterative approach that you're taking and a holistic approach towards your content.
Absolutely. You have to kind of evolve as time progresses. Something, if you're selling a product, it could be seasonal. What works in January, ski clothing, might not work in the height of the summer.
Yeah.
So, it's that constantly, that understanding and overview of not everything is relevant in this particular moment. And it might be relevant now, but not in 12 months. So it's just kind of evolving and working with a team like us to kind of get to the place that you want to be.
Okay. And I guess defining your content hierarchy, we talked about this earlier, didn't we, Jack, in terms of, that transactional, educational, informational split?
Yeah, and this is something which I think is really important. It's, a lot of strategies in SEO and content will just be full send, here's the search volume, here's the articles we're creating. But what we like to do, and what I'd always encourage anyone to do, is actually think where it lands in the funnel. Everyone has a ultimate conversion that they want to get to, and where does that content piece kind of align to? Is it right at the top? Like again, I've used an example travel company here. Are you talking about a town guide or an interesting thing that's happening, which then is going to lead to actually someone wanting to get the train? So there may be train information, parking, destinations, that kind of thing. And then finally, it may be a purchase of a train ticket or a ticket at the event. So it's actually, how is your content working, and how are we typically internally linking down that funnel to get to that ultimate conversion.
Yeah, and I think you've also got to think about your business model in this. I mean, I know we had a conversation with a prospect and a client a couple of weeks ago actually on this around their business model was slightly different. So it wasn't about driving that ultimate conversion, if you like, on site. It was actually, for them, it could be about like the sort of top of funnel and middle funnel area, rather than driving sort of that bottom of funnel activity. So ultimately they want to become sort of the product or the brand of choice in a specific sector, but amongst a very sort of target niche audience who then actually are the people that are going to buy or the people that are going to implement their offering. So again, aligning that to what your business needs are is a really important aspect, isn't it?
Yeah, and very powerful, yeah. And then finally, I think it's just to say that, yeah, we can use competitors to inform our own strategy.
Yeah.
Like, we have got tools and processes to actually take what competitors are doing well, because there will be areas, again, I'm excited to talk about in the AI masterclass about kind of vector embedding and kind of topical analysis. But some clients will have, competitors will have content over here, we'll have content over here. And of course, we want to start joining that together and becoming that kind of more elaborate space for our niche and have that kind of, dictionary-like full coverage across everything.
Yeah, and I think it's sometimes often seen as a bit of a dirty practice, isn't it, around like reviewing competitors, but actually it's a really good sort of way to start, isn't it? And looking at what content is out there, how do they like structure that content, how do they sort of tone a voice in that space, even understanding some of those nuances is, I think, really important to see. Again, how do you benchmark and how do you then set yourself apart in a world where it could become quite homogenous and could become sort of quite aggregated? It's almost, how do you become distinct in a space?
I mean, you could have the absolute best ideas in the world for a content strategy, but if your competitors are ranking already very well and they're not following that similar strategy, then are you wasting your time? You really have to learn, and it sometimes could be learning from mistakes of competitors, but really learning from the wider.
Okay, so I guess then what makes great on-site content, I think this is where we want to finish in the last few minutes, isn't it, Jack, around what do we think actually makes great on-site content?
And then, it's kind of going back to that fundamental piece we talked about earlier. It's about aligning with the user's needs and intent. So like we said, if they're typing something into Google, into an AI assistant, it's ensuring that our content would align with that question. It's structured for a good user experience, so much like you said, talking about Johnny about UX, is actually, if you are going to be presenting a recipe, just because that's an easy example, do you have those steps? Do you have that numbered list? I said in previous masterclass, EEAT, so ensuring it's coming from a place of experience, expertise, and obviously the domain and the entity has authority. It's obviously accessible. And then, I think the last point here, which is almost essential now, is using the correct video format. Obviously, we see different formats being returned in search results, whether it's a video from YouTube, whether it's an image, and it's ensuring that actually we have that content on site. And I like to kind of label it as like high bandwidth information transfer around actually, you can transfer information to my brain in a paragraph of text, but probably what's going to be quicker is actually put something in a table and giving me the headings, giving me the columns, and being like, okay, I understand that I'm looking for a size 3, and that's this, that, and the other.
Yeah, and I still think we don't see probably enough of this. When you think about how most consumers or most users like to engage with content, I still think we are we do see when we're auditing various accounts out there or various websites, you do see it still being incredibly text heavy. And I do think we're seeing that movement towards things like videos, infographics, tables is gradually sort of coming in, but I still think there's a long way to go in that.
Of course, it really depends on what specific term you're searching for. But for example, I googled how to remove a radiator from the wall. I would have found that quite difficult to get to the point from text. But a video within the text actually made it. You could pause, start. Pause. I mean, it's about like having a bit of everything to kind of complement your what you're offering is.
Absolutely. So I guess common content challenges, and we've put a number of these on the screen, but any particular ones that we want to call out?
I think from my point of view, it is that thin or duplicate content, or even that kind of cannibalization point. And I think we talk about, and it goes back to the whole tech masterclass we talked about. It's that redundancy of, bringing search engines, users in to see something which has no value, wasting time, crawl budget, file space, server space for just low value. And again, when websites of a certain size will get more benefit from doing a cleanup sometimes than creating, a load of new content. And that's just something I can't really stress enough, I don't think.
No. And I think as well, hopefully we've touched on the content gaps and the outdated content piece as well, because I think that's really important for me is where the opportunity is, and really understanding how to find that opportunity is really, really important, because again, this isn't a static it's sort of a moving object. This is constantly evolving. So there are constantly opportunities that are arising. So I guess finally, we just wanted to say thank you very much for everybody attending. Again, as always, I'm really keen to say thank you very much to Ross for joining us this week. Thanks to Jack for coming back for more talk on SEO.
Can't get enough, can you, Jack?
But again, we want to just highlight the fact that there is that opportunity to follow up with us. And if you want to speak to Jack or myself and Ross and his team on anything content related, then please do reach out, and please do book via the register, clicking on the link that's in the chat that we've placed. But again, we'll send out that information afterwards. But yeah, hopefully you've taken a lot of insight today, and we look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks' time to talk all things DPR. Thank you very much, and enjoy the Easter weekend and the rest of the bank holiday. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.